Hi friends, I'm Gio, and welcome to my channel. This story is called The Rings Arrived Yesterday. I hope you enjoy. I'm accustomed to all kinds of emergency calls. I'm a doctor and surgeon at Long Ridge Memorial Hospital in Dead Man's Butte, Nevada, a small town an hour north of Las Vegas. I've dealt with everything from car accidents to hit and runs, to the ton of injuries suffered during the windstorm we had last summer, and the apartment fire we had a few months ago. I've dealt with people accidentally swallowing things, or falling off things, or sometimes random injuries I can't explain. I've dealt with hysterical parents, sobbing friends, guys who are so high they think they're dancing on the Eiffel Tower. I've dealt with some pretty weird crap. I'm used to it. Well, as much as a person can be, though sometimes I still get nervous. But after my first year, it doesn't get to me. The text on my phone got to me. 911, Cray, get home now. It was from my wife, Annette. Cray, his given name is Grayson, but we've called him Cray for most of his life, is my 22-year-old son. My only son. He's off at college down in Vegas, or should be. Has something happened to my son? My wife didn't respond to a call or a text. For nearly 10 seconds, my brain shut down. Somebody caught me before I fell down. They see the text. Maggie, the duty nurse on call. She's met my family, like I've met hers. She knows who Cray is. I'm on call. I can't leave. An emergency could come any second. I've dealt with thousands of incidents, but right now, I'm paralyzed. I'm afraid. I can't think. Has something happened to my son? Maggie made me look at her. Don't worry. Dr. Anderson is here. We'll cover. Check on your family and call us back. I hopped into my red Corolla, still wearing my borrowed scrubs. They smell of vomit because a severe head trauma case had the patient vomiting. I was the accidental target. I don't remember the trip home. We don't live in a big new house, but it is a nice, comfortable house. 2-story, yellow brick, red-tiled roof. Neither my wife nor I have time to do anything fancy with the yard. So it's a generic rock garden. My wife's car is in the drive. My son's car is out front, but it's a drunk job of parallel parking. I parked next to my wife's car, leaving the smelly clothes by the door, and walk into a nightmare. My wife looks stressed. Brown hair a little mussed up, brown eyes open a little too wide, worn t-shirt and orange sweats she must have hurriedly thrown on. She was supposed to meet her friends tonight, because I'm on shift. No matter what she wears, she's still the most beautiful person I've ever seen. A random thought. Tomorrow night, Friday, is date night. We had plans. Those might have just changed. I looked at my son. Cray did not look normal. Of all of us, he always dresses to the nines, always is stylish, always is willing to smile. Not tonight. My smart, confident, fun-loving, and independent son is an out-of-control emotional train wreck. This is bad. But at least he's alive. I relaxed a tiny %. He wore a light gray silk shirt with Japanese koi swimming on it. One sleeve was ripped off, and 4 long scratches were on his arm. The shirt had slight creases. It was brand new. Cray must have bought it especially for tonight. Cray's hair, always styled with product, was a spiky, unkempt mop. His left eye was bruising rapidly and slowly swelling shut. Somebody had attacked my son. I pushed the nausea back into my stomach. Cray needed me to have a level head. He wore slim-fit gray jeans, the expensive, slashed kind from Dolce & Gabbana. I know, because he had to drive up from Vegas to show them off when he first got them. His shoes, black gloss, industrial lace-up boots were scuffed. As bad as that was, the manic look in his eyes terrified me. The tear trucks under his puffy eyes knotted my stomach. He wiped another tear away. I'd guess one of thousands. Who did this to my son? Cray was 1 second away from having a total panic meltdown. My wife held his hand and looked at me, pleading. Annette is a practicing psychotherapist with both a master's in psychology and sociology. If she can't handle this and had to call me, it's bad. Time to inject a little bit of normalcy before things got worse. I can tell right now that blood sugars are way out of whack. Nobody has eaten, including me. Honey, can you get a couple of pizzas from Home Fire while Cray and I set the table? I said. My wife nodded. She knew what I really meant. Sometimes a guy and his dad need a minute alone. She quickly grabbed her keys and wallet. I'll grab a 6-pack too. Heineken all right? Give me 30 minutes. Cray spoke, his voice rising with hysteria. Delivery would be faster. It would, I agreed, as my wife left. Sometimes, when the shock and pain are so deep, the only way to get the brain moving is by doing normal, ordinary chores. It bypasses the higher brain functions and lets the gut deal with intense emotions. Sometimes a simple walk can lead to extraordinary healing. Tactile Processing 101. Let's talk, I told Cray. I went to the cupboard and pulled out a tablecloth. Cray placed it on the table. I pulled 3 plates out of the cupboard and handed them to my son. He spread them around the table. I handed him 3 napkins. He spread those around the table. His hands began shaking. I handed him 3 forks. He spread those around. I handed him 3 knives. He spread those around. I handed him 3 spoons. He took them, but his hands shook so much that he dropped them. Cray started crying. Was it school? I asked. No, he whispered. I handed him 3 glasses. Was it work? No, he whispered, and carefully put the glasses on the table. I got 3 apples out of the fridge and handed them to him. Personal life? He set them down and wiped another tear from his cheek. Maybe. I handed him 3 cookies. Did you tell Mom already? I couldn't get the words out, he whispered. Somebody beat you up? I said. Cray paused a long moment before quietly saying, kind of. Eat the cookies, I ordered, and searched the fridge for something to drink. My wife likes lemonade, so I pulled out a couple of cans of lemonade and gave one to Cray. I needed to get his blood sugar up and didn't have time to wait for the pizza. My son was in shock. Start at the beginning, I said. Cray looked at his scuffed shoes and felt where his ruined sleeve would have been, and he couldn't look at me. I never wanted you to hate me, Dad. Whatever I had expected, that wasn't it. I remained silent. I fell in love with someone. Deeply, really in love. We talked about getting married. We talked about moving in together. We went on a trip last weekend to Lake Tahoe. Just the 2 of us. We are in love, he said. I sat down and folded my arms, not sure what to think. Cray took the seat opposite me. Cray had to process this story in his own way. Best to let him talk, and I'll put the pieces together as I go. So I leaned forward and said, I suspected your trip was a romantic one. How did you 2 meet? A quick smile flashed across Cray's lips, and he wiped another tear. We were at the cafeteria in the student center, and there was 1 piece of lasagna left. We both wanted it. So you shared it? I asked. Cray nodded. We started talking, and there was this dollar theater just below campus, and I asked him if he wanted to see a movie. Him? I asked. Cray's eyes shot wide open, and he sat straight up as if he would run. He stared at me with stark terror. Was this the issue? I scooted my chair next to my son and put an arm around him. I repeated, "Him?" making sure I held my son close. In a very soft voice, Cray said, "Him. His name is Brodrick, and we met 6 months ago." Cray's leg wouldn't stop bouncing. My son was terrified. If I said anything, I'd break this fragile moment, so I squeezed my son's shoulders. I should have told you years ago that I was gay, but I was afraid," Cray said. "Were you ashamed of yourself?" I asked. "Yes, no, I don't know. I guess I was afraid you and Mom would hate me. When I went to college, I realized that I wasn't alone. There's a lot of us out there," he said. My son began to relax, but some sixth sense told me that there was a lot more to this story. I cautiously said, "Your mom and I have known for years. We also knew that when you were ready to talk about it, you'd come to us." "You knew? How?" Cray said. "Your mom is a lot smarter than my old brain. She figured it out first. Besides, I meet a lot of people at the hospital, and you might have tried to keep your preferences secret. But there were signs," I said. "What?" he said. I took out my phone and took pictures of his black eye, the scratches on his arm, and the ruined shirt. With cotton swabs, I wiped each fingernail mark and then sealed the swabs into plastic baggies. I checked his hands and arms. Bruising along the right forearm. Defensive wounds. I took a picture. Somebody threw a punch, and my son blocked it. I continued gathering the trace evidence. Even though I am Cray's dad, I am also a professional. I have to gather evidence almost daily. It hurt that I had to gather evidence from my son. "Give me your shirt," I ordered. Cray took it off and I placed it into a plastic bag. I walked into the bedroom and got an old movie t-shirt and tossed it at my son. Carefully, I sealed and labeled everything to preserve chain of custody. "You and Mom knew about me? What signs did I leave?" Cray said, pulling the shirt on. "We'll go into that later. Something happened tonight to shatter your world and make you drive all the way up to Dead Man's Butte. Evidence indicates there was an assault. Tell me what happened," I asked, and led my son out to the porch where we sat down with the cookies and lemonade. Cray sipped his lemonade and didn't look at me. "Do you believe in love at first sight? Brodrick and I fell in love, have been since our first accidental date." "Enough love to spend the rest of your life with him?" I asked. "Dad, why aren't you freaked out with this, with who I am?" he said. I took a moment to think of an answer that a near-hysterical man would accept. Something had happened, but I didn't want to tip my son over the edge. I replied, "I'm proud of the man you turned into, and I will always love you. That's what dads do." My son took a deep, ragged breath. "Before Mom gets back, tell me the rest," I ordered. Cray leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, and he blushed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring box. Upon opening it, he displayed 2 matching tungsten steel wedding bands. The mood about us worsened, as if it weren't dire before. It was positively horror show now. My mouth went dry, and something inside my chest ached. Something very bad had happened tonight. To my son. Cray didn't need an angry berserker right now. I had to remain calm. I had to remain his dad. I listened. "I went over to Brodrick's house a couple of hours ago. He lives with his folks. It was supposed to be a surprise. I thought it would make him happy. I ordered the rings from Amazon and they arrived yesterday. Got them on discount because we went to Tahoe last weekend and I have tuition coming up. My job at the coffee shop is enough to pay for tuition and rent, but not much else. You and Mom taught me independence means being money-wise. I wanted to make you proud." "Keep things neutral. Keep Cray talking. I'll figure this out as we go. Your mother and I would love to meet Brodrick. What if we met for dinner, Saturday?" "Brodrick likes Italian." What am I saying? Everybody likes Italian. That's how we met. A slice of lasagna. I told you that, though. Cray said, the hysteria and panic rising in his voice. Random, rapid, chaotic thoughts. At least Cray had started thinking. My son teared up again, and he sat up and hugged his knees to him. The rings arrived yesterday. I got them from Amazon. I don't like gold, and silver makes Brodrick's skin turn green. That's why I chose tungsten. Dad, we love each other. They were supposed to make Brodrick happy. How's I supposed to know? Brodrick never said anything. I took a deep breath, more confused than before, and said, "Start with 3 hours ago," I said. "You were driving over to Brodrick's house with the 2 rings you bought from Amazon. The rings arrived yesterday." I pulled up to Brodrick's house, and Brodrick answered the door. Their doorbell is broken because it only squeaks instead of rings. Anyway, I told him I needed to talk to his dad. "Okay, go on," I said. I'd never met Brodrick's dad before. Brodrick said that his dad was old-fashioned. I thought it meant I needed to get his permission to marry Brodrick. So I went into their living room, and his dad came in. He had a beer and was wearing an old wife-beater with sweat stains. I told him that I wanted his permission to marry his son, and I showed him the rings. The rings arrived yesterday. How was I supposed to know? I thought talking to his dad was the right thing to do. Cray faltered. His voice broke. He pulled his knees even tighter to his chest. This must be the core of the trauma. I grew cold inside and kept the anger in check. Maybe I needed to call my friend, Officer Lopez. We've talked many times, and he's given me some great advice. Z, his teenage son, is openly gay, and they've made a million mistakes dealing with life. Somehow, they've survived. What would Lopez say now? Taking a deep breath, I tried to practice calmness. I automatically shifted into my bedside manner. "It sounds like you were doing the right thing. How did Brodrick's dad take it?" Now Cray looked at me, but he didn't see me. He was reliving the trauma. He started yelling. Brodrick had never told his family he was gay. I outed him to his dad. His dad was furious. "None of my children are gay. How dare you?" He started saying a lot of things, nasty things. Brodrick tried to yell, but his dad turned on me. He slapped me and punched me and said a lot more rude things and grabbed my arm and threw me out of the house. "The rings arrived yesterday. I only wanted to make Brodrick happy." "That man threw you out? Hit you? Injured you?" I asked. "That's how I got the scratches and my sleeve was ripped off. Brodrick's dad screamed at me and told me to stay away from his family. Dad, he swore at me and told me to stay away from Brodrick and said a lot more things. I was laying on the grass when he took Brodrick's phone and smashed it. He was screaming and ranting so much, the neighbors came out to see what was going on. I left. I can't get a hold of Brodrick, and I don't know if I should try. I outed him, Dad. I outed him. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. The rings arrived yesterday. I loved Brodrick so much. I wanted to make him happy. How could things get so bad?" Cray completely broke down, ugly crying. I placed my arm around his shoulders and let him sob. My wife came back with the pizza and beer 15 minutes later and sat with us. I gave her the quick version. Fury chilled in her eyes. One thing I learned from her days on the elementary school PTSA: when somebody hurts her son, Mama Bear unsheathed her claws and started swinging. Right next to this angry Mama Bear was an angry berserker dad. "Sit with Cray and see if you can get him to eat. I'm going to need some names and an address." "You're not going to do anything stupid," she said. "You know me. Of course I am." "Not without me," my beautiful wife said. "Be ready in 30. I'm going to see Officer Lopez," I said. Once again, my wife nodded. She knew what I meant. We've talked with the Lopezes many times. I think he'll have some ideas. Just in case, I took the evidence with me. Would my son ever laugh again? Would I ever see his smile? Tonight had scarred him deeply. 90 minutes later, my wife and I were dressed as our most professional selves, including name tags and lanyards with official Clark County IDs. We weren't alone. 2 cars from the LVMPD, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. We're here as well as a black SUV. We had driven down to Vegas, and all of us were now parked in front of the Collins house. For extra intimidation value, the police cars had their reds and blues on. We were attracting every neighbor's attention, and we were parked in front of the Collins house. It had taken my wife a bit of time to get Cray calmed down to give us details. He was in love with Brodrick Collins, an art major who was the same age as Cray. It was time to go in, swinging. As if we had planned this, 4 police officers, a crime scene specialist, my wife, and me walked to the Collins front door. Annette pointed to a small piece of gray fabric with a couple of small fish swimming on it that lay on the ground. Cray's torn sleeve. The crime scene specialist took pictures. The lead officer shook his head and softly said, "This place again? What is this, the 7th time?" Another officer knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, a little louder. No answer. The officer banged on the door with all his might and yelled, "We are here investigating an assault that happened on these premises, which gives us probable cause, and we have a search warrant. In addition to the above, we are performing a welfare check on Brodrick Collins. Either open the door or I kick it open and charge you for interfering in a criminal investigation." The door creaked open an inch, and a woman looked out. "There was no assault, and Brodrick is fine," she said. A man whispered behind her, "Tell those idiots to go away." "You can leave now," she said, her voice trembling. "Ma'am, bring Brodrick to the door immediately. We have a doctor and a psychologist who will evaluate his condition. We need to see Mr. Collins as well," the officer said. The door swung open. "What for?" a man in a sweat-stained wife-beater yelled. The officer presented the search warrant. "Questioning in the assault of Grayson Archibald. You and your wife will step outside while we conduct our search." "No, this is against my constitutional right," the man yelled. "For your information, all procedures have been followed, and Judge Patterson has signed off on this. Please note that our interaction is being recorded on 4 body cams as well as our car cams. If you continue your current actions, you will be charged with interfering with a criminal investigation in addition to the potential assault charges." "I want you off my property," Mr. Collins yelled. One of the officers behind us quietly spoke into his radio. 1024 requested, send officers to my location. A small voice from the radio said, 10-4, officers on the way. The wife heard this and loudly whispered, "Don't make it worse." The officer at the door said, "Sir, this is your final chance. Step outside now. Brodrick Collins, if you can hear me, come to the door. We have a doctor and a psychologist who would like to speak with you." The wife squealed, "He can't. We locked him in his room." "Shut up," Mr. Collins yelled. Sirens sounded in the distance. At least 2 police cars. Forcibly detaining another person against their will is also a crime. The DA might even consider it kidnapping. "Step outside now," the officer at the door said. The officers behind us stepped in front of us. One man drew a taser. "It can't be kidnapping. He's my damn son," the man yelled. 22-year-old man, my wife said. One of the police cars on the way pulled up, lights flashing. 2 officers got out of the car, hands on their holsters. Every neighbor on the street was watching us, and many cars had stopped. I decided to speak. "Mr. Collins, what you did tonight, punching a kid, throwing him out of your house, scratching him, and ripping his clothes, might not seem like much to you, but to the law it can be 3 years in jail depending on the judge. Kidnapping can add anywhere from 5 to 10 years on top of that. Resisting arrest? You will look like an out-of-control psychopath in front of the judge. Are you willing to throw away a decade of your life because you wouldn't walk 10 feet? The wife pushed past him, her hands raised. "I'm going. It wasn't my idea to lock Brodrick in his room. My husband was the one who changed the locks, and he was the one who threw the other boy out. You can look through our house. I don't have anything to hide. Just don't take me to jail because my husband is an idiot." An officer walked her to the edge of the road. Mr. Collins scowled and finally said, "Fine, you'll hear from my lawyer. I'm suing." "I look forward to it," the officer said, and led Mr. Collins away. It wasn't time to relax. We still had to find Brodrick. 2 officers stayed outside with the Collins, while 2 came inside with us, as well as the crime scene specialist. It was a small house, and we looked in every room but one. The lock had been reversed to keep somebody inside, and it was locked. "Brodrick, are you there? Are you all right?" Annette said. "I'm fine. Who are you?" a voice said from the other side of the door. The crime scene specialist knelt by the lock and quickly took pictures. "Look at the marks on the screws. This was done recently, and I'd guess he used a butter knife. Talk to the kid for a minute while I remove the lock. Evidence." "Brodrick, we are here because 2 rings arrived yesterday," I said. "Oh my God, you know Cray? Is he okay?" Brodrick yelled. "We have a problem," the crime scene specialist said. "Something is jammed in the lock and it won't unlock. Maybe the key broke or Collins broke something inside when he refitted it. I have something that might help. Be right back," the crime scene specialist said. "How's Cray?" Brodrick said. "We're taking you to him," I said. Then Annette said, "Cray's in the car outside, but right now I need you to pack what you need because you're never coming back here." In 5 minutes, the crime scene specialist had a portable jigsaw and cut the lock out of the door and stuffed it in a plastic bag. We took Brodrick and his suitcases out to our car, in front of all the neighbors. Cray and Brodrick hugged as if they hadn't seen each other for years. Should I feel sorry for Mr. and Mrs. Collins? No. The crowd had really grown. An officer took a statement from Brodrick, and we drove to Gordon's Gourmet Burgers. Cray and Brodrick sat next to each other, holding hands. Neither could stop smiling. Both kept saying some variation of, "I love you." Annette and I sat across from our son, and I said, "Cray, Brodrick, we give our permission for you 2 to get married. Since the rings came yesterday, and since everybody already knows you 2 are planning on getting married, you might as well wear them." Cray blushed and pulled the small box from his pocket and knelt. "Brodrick, let's make this official. Would you make me the happiest man in the world?" And he slid one of the rings on Brodrick's hand. Of course, the waitress who brought us our burgers and French fries was kind enough to take the first family portrait of the 4 of us. Annette was smiling, and she said, "Until everything settles down, why don't you 2 take over Cray's old room? Now, before we get too far ahead, Cray, how about some introductions?" I never thought I'd see Cray smile again, but his grin was so big it showed every tooth in his mouth. Mr. Collins found me 2 years later. I don't know how. It was a Wednesday night, the day after my shift, and Annette and I were getting ready to go to Mama Lupita's Mexican Grill. It's one of our favorite places because they have a salsa bar and a dance floor. The doorbell rang. Mr. and Mrs. Collins were at the door, wearing their Sunday best. We didn't invite them in. I decided not to be very pleasant, and went straight to the point. After all, this man had attacked my son. "You had 36 months for assault. Did you just get out on good behavior?" I asked. "We'd like to see our son," Mr. Collins said. "Why, didn't you do enough already?" Annette asked. "Because he's our son," Mrs. Collins said. I folded my arms and remembered my son melting down because of these people, and they had locked Brodrick in his room. I was going to enjoy this. By her subtle smile, I think Annette will also. She said, "You could try calling Brodrick, but didn't you destroy his phone?" "We think he changed numbers," Mrs. Collins said. "Brodrick could have always called you on his new phone if he'd wanted. It's been 2 years," Annette said. but there was something just a little bit malicious in her tone. "I can't imagine why he'd have bad memories of you two," I said. "We can't help you." "Is he living with you? Bring him out right now," Mr. Collins yelled. "No can do. He and Cray moved out more than a year ago," Annette said. "Where did they move to?" Mr. Collins yelled. My turn to have fun. "We're rather protective of our son-in-law." "They're married? I never approved," Mr. Collins said. Annette smiled. "Lovely service. Weren't you invited?" "Oh, yeah. You were in jail for assaulting Brodrick's fiancée. Our son. Didn't Brodrick mention something about cutting ties before they moved out of Nevada?" "They left Nevada?" Mrs. Collins said. Innocently, I took my wife's hand and said, "Honey, you know how bad I am with geography. What major city is Hastings a suburb for? Your aunt lived there before she passed?" "I think you met her only once, at our wedding. She gave us that crystal punch bowl that weighed a ton. And Hastings is a suburb of Minneapolis. That's in Minnesota. It's really pretty in the spring," my wife said. "How can they afford that? They just graduated," Mr. Collins said. Annette put on her best socialite act and said, "I don't mean to brag, but my son, Cray, the man you assaulted, is a software engineer for mainframes and server stacks, and you wouldn't believe the place he works at. Cray learned some state-of-the-art mainframe technique that is in high demand. He makes mid-six figures. And Brodrick, he majored in art, but minored in finances. But you already know that. He plays the stock market like some people play the piano. My boys are millionaires several times over, and you should see how they spoil their baby boy." Mrs. Collins shrieked, "They have a child? I have a grandson? What's his name?" Annette smiled sweetly. "I'm sorry, only family is privy to that information." Mr. Collins turned red and yelled, "We are family." I turned around and locked the door. I pointed at a small half-sphere located above my door. "No, you're not. Brodrick disowned you, and we will never forgive you for hitting our son. You will never bother Brodrick, Cray, us, or our grandson. Ever. The day you return to my house or contact me in any way or any of my family, I will file a restraining order against you and call the police. My friend, Officer Lopez, is on speed dial, and if you're worried about proof, smile. You're on camera. It also records sound, like our conversation just now." I then pointed at the other cameras about the property. "Bye. It wasn't nice seeing you," Annette said as we watched them leave. We arrived at Mama Lupita's 10 minutes later. Annette kissed me and said, "You're terrible. Cray and Brodrick don't live anywhere near Minnesota." "I know, but it will keep the Collins busy for a few years trying to find them." We walked inside and joined our son, our son-in-law, and 7-month-old grandson. Annette picked up little Jeffrey and hugged him. I hugged Cray and Brodrick, my sons. I might have lied about where Cray and his family lived, but to tell the truth, I've never seen Cray so happy. Cray and Brodrick were hosting the party because it was their weird anniversary. 2 years ago yesterday, the rings arrived. 2 years ago today, as horrible as that night was, it ended on a sweet note. We drove to the Strip, and Cray and Brodrick had a midnight ceremony in a little chapel filled with white carnations. Today, Jeffrey's adoption is official. I became a grandfather, and Annette became a grandmother. I guess it's tradition. We had our waitress take the picture of the 5 of us. Our little family is growing. Someday, this picture will hang next to the other ones. The happiness overflowed inside me. I couldn't stop smiling as Annette and I raised our glasses to toast our son, son-in-law, and grandson, our incredible, beautiful, amazing family. The end. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. It's much appreciated. We'll see you next week. Peace.